Hello, hi Nicola, how are you doing today?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm also doing well. I'm afraid I'm catching a bit of a cold, so maybe my voice won't be as sharp as usual, but so far so good.
Yes, I think I've actually got a bit of one as well, which is ironic because I'm currently in lovely Cape Town, which is blue skies, sunshine, but
Mm,
I think it's just everything's kind of caught up on me a little bit. So, yeah, I definitely sound a little bit throaty,
Totally, yeah.
but all good.
100% is I was in my hometown for the past a month, and it was like around 20 degrees, also like blue skies, it's on the seaside. And then on Friday I moved back home where I live, and it's like cloudy and gray and 8 degrees, and I think that the temperature change
Yes.
as well as kind of the air change as well, because like there's no more the sea smell in the air.
Yeah,
is what
yeah, yeah,
triggered
yeah.
is what triggered this, as well as you said, like quoting, I mean, everything kind of catching up, because like when you move, especially with your more bigger move, and for context, so you moved from London to Cape Town, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so like with having so many things to do in the last couple of weeks and having probably like no time to breathe and relax.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. There's only so much you can, keep doing. And I think we've packed so much into the first 8 days
Yeah.
and hikes and exercise and meeting people and going out. Obviously amazing, not complaining at all. But
Yeah.
I think it is just a sign of like, okay, just need to take a couple of days just to take a breather and just it's okay to chill, you know?
Yeah.
So
That's really exciting. And yes, I haven't said hello to everyone listening here, either live or on the podcast. Well, we are glad you're here with us today, and I think it's going to be a really, really insightful and value-packed episode, because with us we have Nicola, and she's a confidence and mindset coach. So, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and what you do?
yes. Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. Really looking
Welcome.
forward to our conversation. As you said, I'm a mindset and confidence coach. So I support ambitious women most frequently, entrepreneurs, freelancers, women in business to help them develop greater clarity and build greater confidence so that they
Mhm.
can lead a fulfilling life. And that's a very top line view. I always find it, I still haven't perfected exactly what I do because it sort of spans so much.
Yeah.
But I really believe that when individuals have greater confidence and greater self belief in themselves, they can live a more fulfilling life because they're clearer on what they want to do, the lifestyle they want to live. What their boundaries are, what their non negotiables are, and in turn create this success that feels much more in flow. And I
Yeah.
think we'll probably go on to explain that in a little bit more, well, talk about that in a bit more detail. So I work with women on a one-to-one basis, but I also do a lot of work with organizations, social networks, women's network groups to do group well-being sessions on topics to do with confidence, building emotional resilience, strengthening your mindset so that people in teams can really thrive together as well. So that's sort of the bulk of my work, and ultimately, in my opinion, everything stems down to confidence and mindset. So I'm very passionate about helping individuals build up both of those sort of muscles, as it were,
Yeah.
to be as successful as possible.
How did you, like, so what was your journey towards what you are doing now? So kind of what sparked, what was the decision that's, or what was the event, whatever it was that sparked
Yeah,
you in wanting to do what you are doing now?
yeah, good question. I guess being totally honest, I didn't really know what coaching was before about 3 years ago. I graduated from university doing Spanish and business. I went into a sort of sales role really in London for the first 2 years of my career. Then I moved across to work for an FMCG brand in marketing. And it was a sort of typical didn't really know what I wanted to do,
Mm.
thought it sounded quite fun, liked food and travel, which are the two industries that I worked in. And it was fine. The people that I worked with were great. I never had bad managers. The culture at work was pretty good in both companies that I worked for. But I couldn't help but notice more and more myself and my friends talking about, oh, we're feeling fine, or can't wait for the weekend, or oh, I'm so glad it's Friday. And the more that went on, I began to sort of think, I don't want to just be wishing away the weeks and waiting for the weekend. And actually, I don't feel energized and inspired by the work that I'm doing. Like, I can see the results that I'm creating for the business, but it's not having an impact in the way that I would like on the world.
Mm.
And I think it was that exploration of, okay, well, what sort of impact do I want to create, and what would I love to do that I could also, earn a living from. And I've always been into health and wellness, but typically on a more physical side. So doing sport, going to the gym, running and eating well, but hadn't really explored the mental side of that, your mindset and your mental health. So I did look at a couple of options in terms of, nutritional therapy or therapy itself. And then I came across coaching. And I just loved the concept of the fact that it sort of focuses on an individual where they are now and really supports them and uses tools to help them progress and propel forward in a
Mm.
direction that aligns with their goals. And I just thought, how amazing to be able to work with someone and support them to basically become a better version of themselves. And I think, yes, I think therapy is extremely valuable, and I think actually coaching and therapy together would be the
Yeah.
perfect combination, but they serve very different purposes. And I then worked with my own coach at the very beginning of my journey to sort of retraining, and I just
Mhm.
saw how incredible it was and how much progress I made in those 3 months, that it really confirmed the power of coaching, and that I could identify a lot of traits that my coach at the time had that I had as well. And I thought,
Mm.
actually, I could probably do this. And I was so excited by the process and the learning and the sort of neuroscience behind it as well, which I think maybe often gets overlooked when we talk about coaching, because there is a lot of studying involved to understand how to be an effective coach. Anyway, so that was a couple of years ago now, and I trained as a coach. I started working on alongside my then full-time job,
Mhm.
working with a few clients, and I still at that point thought, oh, I'll do it in a few years' time. I'll wait until X, Y, and Z. A
Mhm.
classic red flag. Oh, I'll wait until then. Oh, I don't have the time. And I was like, no, I love this. Why would I wait? Why would
Mhm.
I carry on working in a role that isn't fulfilling, is fine, it's not helping anyone.
Yeah.
And then about, what would it have been, sort of 6 months or so after I started training as a coach and working with clients, I then actually quit my full-time job and really focused my energy and efforts on building up my coaching practice, which has led me to where I am now.
That's such an inspiring story. And every time I hear someone succeed in what they want, I mean, the first step is always being almost courageous enough and trusting yourself that I can do this, right? Because
Mm,
we are leaving stability and comfort behind.
yeah,
And
yeah.
even though that stability and comfort often come with all of these feelings that you mentioned of like not feeling like it's a fulfilling role, it's a fulfilling job, almost looking your life pass you by as you're living it, we're still kind of, it's, I think for women, and that's, I presume this is probably like a challenge that almost every one of your clients talks about, which is like, am I good enough to do this? Am I equipped
Mm,
enough to start doing this? Like, because like, even though like I don't have obligations in terms of, let's say, a family or kids,
yeah.
I have a safety net of sorts, let's say, because my
Hmm.
partner earns a living. So when I was starting my own business, when I quit my own job and started thinking of what I want to do. And even kind of scarier, I had a 9 months gap between these two things,
Yeah.
because it happened when we just went into the first lockdown, and Zagreb, where I live, was hit by an earthquake. So
Oh, wow.
I was in a survival mode for 9 months,
Mm,
because
mm,
everything started like in those like 3 to 4 weeks. I've experienced so many different types of traumatic events that
yeah.
completely, like, I just completely lost it. I felt like I was brain dead. And
Mm,
because of that, I decided that, oh, now this is my chance to kind of reevaluate everything that I've done so far and see
mm,
in which direction I want to move forward. But like, I can't imagine for someone who hasn't been working, or who has a low income job, to be kind of almost like to find trust in themselves and the time as well. I almost feel privileged to be able to do that, because I've had like some money saved up, because I tend to save a lot of my money because I'm scared I won't have any, but that's a completely
yeah.
different issue. But yeah, like I every time when I speak with my friends or colleagues or just people I meet through doing what I do now, it's always, I don't trust myself enough to do the leap.
Mm,
And
mm,
that's where the confidence part and the confidence coaching comes in, because
yeah.
I feel like it's been like, it's that it's that thing of, I'm not sure that we are not born confident, like confidence is something you learn. But then again, we live in a world that constantly oppresses women, and has been for
Mm,
generations. So if I look like how my mom acted, or how my grandmas acted in the world, especially in a patriarchal culture, it's really hard to be kind of, yeah, brave enough and courageous enough to step ahead, because the truth is, like, we don't have as many kind of examples of, oh, this is happening, this is possible for someone like me, for someone in the same situation as I am.
mm. Yeah, I think and I mean, there's lots of things that you mentioned there, but well, firstly, what you said, everyone does have confidence. It's definitely something that shows up in different domains of our life. So someone might be confident with cooking, but not
Mm,
confident with public speaking, or someone might be confident with speaking to new people, but not with putting together Excel spreadsheets. And then that demonstrates that we have the capability to strengthen our confidence. It's just a case of understanding what tools and techniques lend themselves to doing that. And that's exactly what, I can help my clients with doing. In terms of what you said around trust and not trusting that you might be capable of doing something, I think what sort of separates people from one another, and you're a great example, someone who's a woman who's set up their own business and almost taken a leap of faith into something that you're clearly very passionate about and want to commit your time and energy to.
mm,
That takes confidence and that takes an element of trust, but it's also, you've identified something that you're so passionate about that the risk reward um, means that you've done it. Whereas some people might think, well, yes, I'd love to set up this business, but it's not worth the risk. So
mm,
they stay in this position where they might be feeling unfulfilled, where they're feeling dissatisfied. And that's what I find very frustrating to see sometimes, because would you prefer to look back and say, oh, well, I'm so glad I've tried, but it didn't work out?
mm,
Or I wish I had tried. And I just know that I wish I had tried.
yeah,
And until you try, you don't know. And it doesn't
yeah,
mean to say that if the first time it fails, there are so many stories of men and women all over the world who have numerous failures until they have their success.
yeah,
But if you stopped after that first failure, and thought, okay, well, I'm giving up, well, then you're not going to get anywhere. And it's like, that's the mindset shift.
Yeah.
That's the mindset work that comes in that says it's okay if I fail. Let's not shy away from failure. Let's see it as an opportunity to learn. What's the worst that could happen? And then how can we use that to move forward in a more powerful way? But it's hard for people to do that on their own if they've not had that experience before, or they don't know how to manage their mindset that will talk them out of doing things potentially if things
Yeah.
don't go to plan.
Yeah. I have never thought about confidence in a way that you just described, of kind of having confidence in one thing, but not kind of not necessarily lacking, but not channeling,
Not as
let's say.
much.
Yeah, not as much
Yeah.
of in something else. It makes perfect sense, but like all this time I've thought it's like you either have confidence or you don't, which is
And that's the classic, that's something that I see quite loads of these limiting beliefs.
yeah,
We're very quickly to use labels of ourselves without realizing
yeah,
that link to our identity.
yeah,
So, oh, I'm not a confident person, or I'm not organized, or oh, I'm not good at cooking. And the more you sort of repeat that identity, it's like self-deprecating in a way,
yeah.
because you use it as sort of, oh, something that I'm not good at.
Mm,
But if you say it over and over again, you believe it to be true, and therefore you see it as a fact,
yeah,
and you don't even try to flip it on its head.
yeah, yeah,
And it's like, of course you can have confidence. It's just a case of working on it, and it might feel uncomfortable, but that's fine. You work through it, you build it, and then
yeah,
you strengthen that skill, and you have confidence.
yeah. Like I already feel kind of more um almost powerful just knowing that I am confident in some areas, because as I said, like I didn't make that connection, and I wouldn't classify myself as being confident in
Mm-hmm.
anything. But um looking at it that way, like how I'm a confident person when it comes to cooking. I my, my
Yeah.
my partner will attest to that, because he always says that he can't understand how can I cook such brilliant meals without a recipe, because it's just like
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
like just like a surge of inspiration. I see what I have in the house, and then I mix up something and it turns out amazing.
Yeah.
Whereas he would, like, just like follow the recipe to a T, and like
Yeah.
every I, every dotted I and every crossed T, it needs to be like to the gram. Whereas I'm completely like creative in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And even so, even me now realizing that this is a part of my life where I am confident makes it easier for me to almost practice confidence in other areas, because now
Mm.
it's not something that I've never done in my life and that I've never achieved it, but that I know I already have it. I just need to employ it in other areas of my life as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you identify an area that you don't feel confident in, so let's say public speaking,
Mm,
quite a common example. If you tell yourself, I'm not good at public speaking, or I'm not confident public speaking, you'll never ever put yourself forward for an opportunity to public speak,
yeah,
because you've told yourself you're not good at it. And the more you shy away from that, the sort of smaller that muscle of confidence in that area shrinks.
yeah,
So what we really need to do is find smaller stepping stones to get there. So, okay, let's say it's public speaking. Okay, so in the next meeting that you have at work, or a next social occasion where you're with new people, challenge yourself to just make one comment or ask one question,
mm,
so that you're gradually building up that skill, that strength. So that the next time you say, okay, well, I managed to say something. Now I say two things.
yeah,
Or, and then it's just identifying those opportunities, which is once again a mindset shift, rather than shying away from things that you have black and white said, I'm not good at this, I'm not
yeah,
good at that.
yeah,
And it's just gradually building up that skill, which is hard to do on your own. I'm not going to pretend that it isn't, but a business mentor, a coach, that's exactly where those sort of skills and working with someone like me makes a big difference, because you have someone supporting you and cheering you on, and
yeah,
helping to remind you that it's not you. It's just this mindset, these outdated beliefs that maybe you're holding on to that are holding you back and
Yeah.
sort of keeping you in this space.
Yeah.
Which is why you're not seeing the progression and the results that you want to, because you're not sure how to get out of this sort of feeling of almost like trapped, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah. I that kind of trapped feeling, I always describe it as being in a limbo, because like
Yes.
what you said like a couple of minutes ago, how that I'm confident because I'm doing what I'm doing, which is interesting to me because like I feel that yes, so my reward, and kind of reward and fear, reward and cost, and reward and whatever it is, I just my reward of doing what I'm doing and bringing it to life far outweighs not doing it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not afraid of shitting my pants every day or doubting myself, because I am. It just like I feel like this is like I feel that what we are creating and doing here is much bigger than myself, and because of that, I
mm,
have kind of I'm able to almost leave all of those doubts behind me, or rather
yeah.
next to me, not necessarily behind, but like they're next to me.
Yeah.
But I'm still moving forward because
mm,
I feel like I this is bigger than me, and this is bigger than me plus my doubts and plus my fears. And as I'm
yeah.
going, I am, like as I get more feedback, as I get more comments on how people are finding this valuable, it makes it much easier for me to kind of lower down the inner critic that says
Yeah.
you're not doing this good enough or well enough or whatever it is, because I'm getting a validation of sorts that
mm,
what I am doing is okay. But being stuck in your own head is what's, I think, the worst, because when you don't kind of communicate to the outside, that's why I literally force myself to write in these moments when I'm feeling, like stuck and trapped in my head and in a limbo of propelling forward and almost like falling down. Like those two things, I feel like those two dimensions are stretching me, one to each
mm,
side. It's really important to, yeah, if anything, ask, not necessarily ask for advice, but just like ask someone to listen to you so that you get it out of your head, so that it's not
mm,
only living in your head, but that you also get that you get it outside of your head. And usually that's always the first step, when a lot of things clarify on their own, because now they're not only almost like abstract and virtual thoughts, they're now something you have articulated. And I feel like in the process of articulating, almost like a benchmark of sorts happens, where your mind goes, is this a fact or is this just a fear or a belief
mm,
that's kind of holding me back?
mm. Yeah, a sort of good way of processing that, linking to what you said, is to create separation between those thoughts. So you said, maybe speaking to someone, but even it can be as simple as writing it down on a list. What is it that I'm afraid of? What is it that's stopping me? Writing that down, stepping away from it for half an hour, 20 minutes, coming back, rereading that list, and almost bringing some humor to it and sort of laughing and be like, oh gosh, why am I not doing this? I'm worried that, Sarah from high school might see it and laugh at me. Like,
Mm,
you sort of create that separation, and able to see it from a different perspective. And just linking back to something that you mentioned earlier in terms of that validation, I'd say it's something to be aware of in
mm,
a sort of nice way, because the reason that you're doing what you're doing and the reason that you've taken these risks and taken these bold steps is because you have this purpose of what you want to create, and you have that passion of what you want to create. And we can sometimes get distracted from that by seeking the validation from other
mm,
people
yeah.
to make us think, oh, we're doing it for that. And it's great to see that we, my community, your community, when they give you that positive feedback of that really helped me, that was really insightful, that is affirming that the work that we're doing is correct and is serving a purpose. But it's that balance of doing it, knowing that without having to receive that, because otherwise we're sort of relying on that external feedback and that external commentary to sort of prove to us that we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, you're doing the right thing, and
Yeah.
all your content is coming from within, your wisdom, your knowledge. And it's almost like a bonus that you're then getting that validation.
It is. It's almost like a Trojan horse, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
the important thing is to, when you're almost, when you're in need of validation of sorts, it's important to benchmark it against your values and your purpose, and not against what someone else thinks you should be doing, or
yes,
in which direction you should be going. Because all of what I'm doing, kind of how it started, was that I was going a lot, like I felt like I was in muddy waters in a way, feeling like I'm like there's a light, like that there's a light of sorts, let's say, and that I was, like beyond the underwater and trying to get to the surface, and to a particular part on the surface level, that I knew this is something that's calling me, this is something that I should be doing, that I feel I want to be doing. But you, like, still, when you look around and you still, let's say, you see other fish and how they're doing their own thing, you think, oh, maybe I should be doing that because it seems like working for them. And then I literally got lost, so just like swimming around under the water instead of following that sun ray that I felt was calling me, and going to the surface to figure out what it is that I want to be doing, and what is the way that I want to pursue my business, my projects, my hobbies, my life, my everything, because everyone else seems to have an opinion on each part of your life and how you should be doing it based on whatever it's right for them. Like, sometimes it comes from a good intention, right? But sometimes it's just like, I feel, getting unsolicited advice so that people feel like useful of sorts, but like it's not useful because you feel like it's not really pleasant to receive something like that.
Yeah, I think that's it's a really good point, because that can often be the reason why people don't act on their bigger desires, or don't pivot careers, or don't set up a business, because they've asked friends, family members, partners, who serve a purpose in terms of love, friendship, support, absolutely. But do they come from a position where they are the best person to give you advice in this area? And I think if you're someone that wants to set up their own business and you ask your mother or your father for their advice, but they've never set up their own business before, actually they're not really the person you should be going to for advice, because they might think, no, it's too risky. You're not going to have financial security. I wait until you're 40 and you're earning X, Y, and Z before you do it. Because you trust them and you love them, you listen to it and you don't take action. So I always think, be mindful of who you're asking for. And you said, some people give you unsolicited advice. Well, I mean, that happens all the time, doesn't it? People just butt in and say, oh, you should do this, you should do that. And you can listen to it, appreciate it, but choose not to kind of absorb it too much, because that can be very confusing. Despite them, having the best intention, it can actually, be a reason why people don't pursue things, because they've just taken that one person's advice and decided to run with it.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's something that, like, I'm the first person in my family to do a lot of things. I always think like I feel like a black sheep, because I have literally done everything the opposite of what the rest of my family did.
That's amazing.
Thank you. And I know that like even now when I speak to my mom, or even kind of more challenging with my grandparents who are the
Yeah.
older generation, what I'm
Mm.
doing, it's like so out of reach for them, because I'm like I'm not in a 9 to 5 job. I don't go to an office.
Yeah.
I don't have co-workers. Like, am I working even?
Yeah.
Am I working
Yeah.
at all? And then like even navigating, especially now the holiday season is approaching, and navigating these conversations, I
Mm.
am my own boss and I am bringing income to my family. Yes, like I don't have to have a traditional 9 to 5 in order to
Yeah.
be deemed valuable even in my own family, right? Like I can
Mm.
feel often that I'm not belonging
Yeah.
inside of my own family because I do so many things differently to them.
Mm.
And sometimes they don't understand my decisions, and I'm okay like with them not understanding. What I struggle often with, and I presume many others do, is that I would like if they give me advice with their best intentions because they're simply looking out for me, I always want to almost prove myself right to them and try to explain why what I'm doing is
Mm.
okay and it's right and it's going to bring fruit. But at the same time, it's really hard to teach someone so much context and depth and almost not almost like change their opinion because they are older and they have grown up in a completely different era. So I find
Mm.
myself thinking, should I say something so that I don't feel like I'm being shit on all the time? Pardon my French, because
Yeah.
it's like all of those questions feel like, even though they come from their place of worry, it feels invalidating, and it feels like
Mm.
I have that they think that I have no idea what I'm doing with my own life,
Mm.
and yeah, it just like creates an unpleasant feeling of sorts when I think, should I say something? Because if I don't, I feel like I'm not standing up for myself. But if I do, I
Yeah.
spend so much energy in almost for nothing because I know that there's like that they will have trouble understanding what I'm trying to convey to them.
Yeah, I think it is so tricky with the different generations and especially grandparents that they're quite sort of set in their ways of,
Mm,
of how things are done. I think yeah, I would encourage you or people in similar situation to a create some boundaries around that as well, of being like, this is, you need to protect your energy, and it sounds like you've sort of tried multiple times to explain what you do, and I think it is always important to let other people know how you're feeling, but wording in a way of um not sort of saying you made me feel invalidated, but the comment around X, Y, and Z
mm,
made me feel, and it's sort of separating it, or it seems like maybe there's a lack of understanding around what I do. Maybe we can have this conversation again in 3 months' time, etc., and
yeah,
sort of not continuing on. And also, as you said, you've got the awareness that they just come from a different generation where in those days roles like ours didn't exist, and life and work was totally different, and that's okay. And it's not your responsibility to try and get them to understand. You've sort of done what your bit, and it sort of can be left at that, I think.
yeah, that's really good advice because I feel like a, a I know from when I'm speaking with my friends who also are business owners, where they do feel responsible for like trying to explain to everyone and almost like change their minds and help them understand. But in that, like at the end of the day, you're just so low with energy and
Mm,
frustrated because more often than not you don't succeed
yes,
at
yeah, yeah,
doing
yeah.
this. And that's something that I'm now figuring out and learning that like that's actually completely normal and natural. I can't
Mm,
be I can't feel or be held responsible for what someone else thinks.
No,
And
impossible.
yeah, it's completely impossible. And and as you said, like what I'm learning as well now is, and what I'm trying to practice is creating boundaries and not getting involved, like personally, because often like I'd feel personally attacked by what
Yeah.
they're saying, and now just like trying to separate that and
Mm,
be like,
mm,
thank you for your brilliant advice, but
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
yeah,
And even it's sort of thank you for advice, but I'm not actually looking for advice.
yeah,
I'm just sort of
mm,
trying to explain to you what I'm doing.
yeah,
And it is that separation because it's communication style,
yeah,
it's culture, it's, you know, whatever else it might be. And it isn't a personal attack on individuals. It's probably a frustration maybe on their part that they're like,
mm,
oh, and maybe, who knows, there's a sort of an element of, oh, I wish I could have done that when I was in my career,
yeah, yeah,
and that being something that they maybe once dreamed of, but was so far-fetched back in the day that
yeah,
they could never pursue that idea.
yeah. Oh, 100%. Now I'm curious. So we talked a lot about all of these shoots that we either get from our close friends and family with forms of advice or just like their own thoughts. But we also have like I'll call them global shoots that come
Yes.
from the society at large, and they kind of span out by you either just like absorbing what other people are doing and then questioning your own thoughts and decisions and processes, but also like not not only absorbing but getting almost pushing down the throat of what you're supposed to be doing and what you're not supposed to be doing, even more. So how can we, especially as women solo founders, navigate through those waters and kind of
Mm,
find, like the find almost calmness and peacefulness
mm,
inside of ourselves, so that we can listen from the inside and what our own gut and voice and brain and heart and soul and
mm.
everything is telling us, and almost like mute what's happening on the outside.
It's such a tricky one because we grow up believing,
Mm,
because what we've told from family, teachers, in books, in movies, of what life should look like if you want to be successful.
yeah.
It's going to school, going to university, getting a job in the city, staying in a job for 3 years before you move on to the next one, because otherwise it will look bad on your CV.
Mm-hmm.
All those kind of things. And it's, for me, because that was something that I really had to kind of deal with, I guess, when I was making that transition of stable, safe corporate job
Yeah.
to setting up my own coaching business, which, even now is still a relatively new thing, although it's much more common now. It's just questioning those shoulds, like who actually said that? Is it just something that I've been told to believe, that I should have a corporate job for 10 years, save up enough money, and then set up my own business? Or I should um, earn X, Y, and Z, and then I'll be successful? Or I should apply, and this is one that I always kind of laugh at now, is I applied for management consultancy firms in London after I graduated university. I had no interest. I didn't even know what it meant. And I ended up getting through to like the last rounds of two of the big like top four consulting
Mm-hmm.
firms. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but I felt that I should, because that would be a successful choice.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking, this isn't actually something that I agree with. And something that you touched on briefly earlier was around having your values and your values clearly identified. And I don't think it's necessarily something that's widely done, especially if you're working in a corporate job. But I really encourage everyone to have a think about, 5 of their core values, and to do a bit of a reflection on whether those are present in their life.
Mm.
And some people like to separate it between work and personal, but I do think it's such a blend now, work and life, and it shouldn't be separated. You know, I do believe that we work so much of our life that at least to be able to enjoy it, have fulfillment from it, there's always options to achieve that in a job, and then make decisions based on those values.
Yeah.
So for example, a couple of mine are like freedom and flexibility. So having the flexibility and the freedom to work with who I want, work where I want, and sort of work with organizations or social enterprises that I want to work with.
Yeah.
And that in itself is a way of sort of changing the narrative around what we should be doing, and taking that responsibility to unlearn things that maybe we've been brought up learning, which once again is not easy.
Yeah.
But if we put a bit of time and effort into thinking them, you can say, okay, well, I understand why that would have been the case, but actually that doesn't serve me anymore.
Mm.
You know, I don't believe that I should work in a corporate job for 10 years before I pursue my passion.
Yeah.
I want to do that now. And I'm going to sort of change the narrative around that.
A thought that came to my head whilst you were speaking about this is, I spoke about this in earlier conversations, how I really hate labels that come with when you introduce yourself and you need to say, what do you do? And like,
yes, agree.
I hate it. And especially for someone like me who is a generalist and has a lot of interest, and I've done a lot of really, really different types of work in my during my work experience. I actually think that we should be introducing ourselves according to our values instead of the labels that are kind of, oh, I'm a manager, or I don't know, a surveyor, I'm a civil engineer.
Yeah.
I think because like when we say let's say I studied geospatial engineering on my bachelor's, and I can say I'm a geospatial engineer, but that puts me on the same, like it makes me exactly the same as everyone else that studied geospatial engineering. Whereas if I introduce myself with my values, like it makes me a unique human being, like a full spectrum human being. And I think it just brings so much more depth to the conversation than just saying, what do you do? And it's a conversation that I've had recently around what are you doing versus who are you being. And for me, this being and doing relationship was almost the same, because I had a big challenge trying to figure out who I am as Franca, as an individual, because my identity was for so long connected to academic and work success. And because of I was so overwhelmed with how do I introduce myself, because it was always around my academia and my work, whereas now I introduce myself in the terms of who am I being. And I think it comes down to the values that you just said, and I agree they are becoming, I think they are, we shouldn't separate the business and the personal ones, because we bring ourselves to whatever we do, so the values remain the same, whether we are like just relaxing on the couch or talking to you now, my values remain the same.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way of thinking about it. And I would encourage people to do the same. Even say, oh, I'm someone who loves hiking, meeting new people, and writing. Or, you rather than say, oh, I'm a teacher, or I'm Nicola, I love X, Y, and Z. In my spare time, I do this.
Yeah.
A couple of things that I'm passionate about are, and I'm also a coach. It's not just I am a coach, because there's so much more than that. And it's I think that's really a nice way of bringing. Also, it's memorable. People will be like, oh gosh, yeah, you said that you're you grew up in Madrid or that you love hiking. I love hiking as well. Tell me about a recent hike that you've been
Yeah,
on, and it opens up that conversation.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's also a kind of um, it brings us back to us, right? Because like when we introduce ourselves and describe our jobs, it's like we are losing the connection because we are connecting it to something external instead of ourselves, something internal from inside of us. It's like, and I think that's just like realizing this now and speaking as thoughts come through my mind. It feels like um, the way we have been kind of yeah taught and learned to speak about us, even when we are allowed to speak, it was always about not about us because that's not humble. We are too bragging, right? And all of
Mm,
these kind of
mm,
negative emotions. So we learned that the safest option is to just say something very short, like five words, and relate it
yeah.
to something that oh I'm a, yeah I'm not even I'm an entrepreneur, but it's like I have a hobby, right? It's like we have a tendency to call our businesses projects or hobbies, like to downplay them
Mm,
because we are
mm,
really almost like afraid of what the reaction will be on the other side because for so long it wasn't a supportive one.
mm. Yeah, I think that's something that I remember thinking sort of at the beginning when I set up my business was I was almost downplaying my the love for what I was doing
Mm,
and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm a coach," this is what it rather than being like, "I love my job and I'm so grateful to be a coach and how amazing that I get to do this." But I think what I realized was so few of my friends would say that. Their job was fine. They didn't enjoy it. It was boring. They didn't want to talk about it. So I wasn't used to talking about it with so much enthusiasm and passion. I almost felt guilty or embarrassed that that I had something that I was so happy and excited about,
yeah,
but I knew that they didn't. So I therefore downplayed, not not to that degree, but I would almost try and divert off the topic
yeah,
of career because I knew that they were in a position where they didn't enjoy their job and got a lot of stress and overwhelm from it. But then, I remember speaking to my coach about it probably 2 years ago now, and she was sort of saying, well, the more that you show enthusiasm and passion for your job, you might inspire other people to seek new careers or jobs that they can have the same feeling with, rather than it
yeah,
almost normalizing
yeah,
it to
mm,
feel, that it is bad, that it is draining. And I just thought actually that's so important,
yeah,
to keep on doing that.
yeah. Oh, 100%. As so, I love this point, this entire point, because as you were talking, I was like, I feel exactly the same way. And yeah, I just like feel I feel like feel personal guilt for someone else that they're not able to say the same or feel the same enthusiasm for their job as I
Mm,
feel for mine. But yes, like just before you mentioned what your coach said to you, I had the exact same thought in the terms of if we if we downplay what we do, if we downplay our passion, our enthusiasm, our happiness, and how much joy and fulfillment it brings us to in our lives, we are actually signalizing that people are supposed to be feeling
mm,
bad and unfulfilled in their jobs, whereas
mm,
the reality is the benchmark should be what you and I are
yeah.
blessed to be feeling in our day-to-day
Mm,
lives. And that's I will go to the length to say that it's a human right to feel
yeah.
that way in your job.
Mm. And also we ultimately we have made the choice to have this. Everyone has the choice, and I think
Mm,
that's what people forget. You don't have to be in that job. You don't have to be sitting through stress and overwhelm and anxiety every day. Of course, there'll be situations in everyone's job where it does feel a little bit too much,
yeah,
but I have to sometimes bite my tongue when friends that I'm speaking to go on and on and on about how awful their job is, yet don't do anything about it. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we've made that bold decision, we've made that choice, we've trusted, we've had faith, we've believed in ourselves, our ability, and we've had a vision that we wanted to pursue.
Yeah.
You know, that's come with stress, overwhelm, risk as well.
Yeah.
But we're doing what we love,
Yeah.
and everyone can do that as well if they want. I truly believe that, despite financial situation or family situation, like there's always a way of making it happen if
Yeah.
the desire is strong enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the, if there's a will, there's a way. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, type. And yeah, I can I can relate to being in similar experiences with my friends and family, where yeah, I just like, I always dislike when someone's just being, oh, I'm like, I don't like my job, or this isn't working for me. But like, we meet coffee after coffee or lunch after lunch, and every time it's the same story. I was like, but
Yeah.
did you do something in between, like from the last time you said this exactly the
Yeah.
same thing? And before, like, I would really invest a lot of my own energy in trying to help them move, like, take the first step. And what I've learned, especially in the last like a year or so, is that some people just like to like almost like to whine about their situation while
It's
staying
part of
in
their
comfort.
identity.
Yeah, in comfort of
Mm.
the situation they are in, because everything
Mm-hmm.
else is super scary. And as you said, like, it's their choice.
Yeah.
I like, sometimes there was a situation just like in the last 3 months where I was like, should I help this person financially because they're struggling and I know that will help them? And then I caught myself and started thinking, and I realized, like, they have 5 different ways of doing the same thing for themselves.
Mm.
Um, that they are not choosing to do. It's like they have the means, they just
Mm.
choose not to do it, and so it's not my responsibility to go and
Yeah.
help them, because at the end of the day it's their choice.
And that's almost links back to what we were saying. It's more of a reason for us to be boldly kind of proclaiming and shouting about what we're doing to help inspire others,
Yeah.
because ultimately we can never make someone do something.
Yeah.
You know, with the clients that I work with, I'm there to support them. I give them mindset tools. We work out what the limiting beliefs are. We build new beliefs. I champion them, but I can't physically make them do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So you have to have the desire and willingness to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
And then you see other people around you, which I think is something that I found so valuable in my journey, is surrounding myself with other women who are doing similar things, not necessarily the same job,
Yeah. Yeah.
but building their own businesses, doing things that weren't traditionally successful.
Yeah.
You know, and even if it's just having conversations, having coffees, working with them, following them on Instagram, just seeing that really does make a difference. So I would really encourage people who are maybe thinking of wanting to make big changes or pivot their careers or set up their own business or side hustle, just get familiar and build up like-minded people around you that are doing that, because that really helps with things like confidence and your mindset to show that it is possible. It's just, you know, taking it step by step and making it happen.
Oh, that's so. I I'm tired of saying 100% on for every sentence that you say, but that's because it's true. Because, like, I feel that, and it's part of what I'm almost trying to facilitate in Unsetting Expectations, not necessarily with a so much of a, let's say, a job change, but rather a mindset change, where it's like
Yeah.
your brain is giving you enough reasons for why not to do something, that you need to actively work on finding reasons, finding factual evidence almost in the real world that what you think is not possible to do, it's
Yeah.
very much possible, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Build up the
yeah,
evidence.
yeah, and yeah, that I think that goes in, like, so with the articles published on the platform, we have like so many inspiring stories on how people overcame difficult life situations. And it can be like for someone, and I always say, like, never compare your experiences and never compare your
Mm,
trauma, because
mm,
what can be something that I brush off because I've had a tough life period, it can literally be someone's life or death situation if they've never
yeah.
experienced something like that before. Like, I was just
Hmm.
unfortunate to experience a lot of trauma in my childhood and throughout my life, that now when
Mm,
something traumatic happens, I am much more ready, and I have tools because I went to therapy since I was like 5 or 6
yeah.
probably. I have the tools to go through it. But someone maybe like 45 or 50 or 60 that had an awesome life by that point, and then if something railroads, it's like they can
Mm,
have like such an enormous reaction. And both of those are fine. Like, we shouldn't be comparing those situations and like whose problem is a bigger problem, and
yeah.
who should react in a way and who shouldn't, because at the end of the day, each of us have a different, like, we are all very unique, and our hormones are unique, the way we react are unique, the way our all of our experiences in our life have shaped us are unique. So just the way that we are functioned, the way we're conditioned are different, and that's why each of us, like, it's completely normal to have very different reactions to when things happen. But
Hmm.
on
Hmm.
the other side, um even though we, like, in all of that differentness in all of those differences, we have something in common, which is we almost always feel like we are the only human on this planet going through that and feeling those feelings, which is why it's like, it's my passion and almost like a purpose to normalize feeling normalize feeling those feelings, normalize speaking about those feelings, because I feel like if we don't speak about them openly, then they, like, they bring a veil of shame into it, and it,
Mm,
like, it just normalizes the same as with the job, and saying how passionate you are. And if we don't do that, if we don't show out our enthusiasm outside, or our way of thinking to the outside, it means that we are normalizing feeling bad about the things that have happened to us, in which 9 times out of 10 we had no control of and no decision in.
yeah. No, I think I totally agree. I think it's a case of opening up those conversations and putting yourself in scenarios where it's complementing what you're wanting to create
Mm,
rather than hanging around or sticking with, by all means, your friends from childhood are still going to be your friends, but if 90% of them are in corporate roles that you're wanting to move away from, that's not going to help you make that decision.
yeah.
Or if you're living in the same like childhood village that you've always grown up in, but you have ambitions of living by the sea, if you're not getting yourself into these new environments, then it's not going to happen. And that's why I think, it comes down to this choice. As you say, we're all different, and the best that we can do is choose how we can best show up in our own life
Mm,
and choose how we want to respond to situations, because that will look different to everyone.
yeah.
My best is different to your best. Some days, it changes every day. So
Yeah.
if we can just sort of center that back into us as an individual, what's important to us, how do we want to feel, and what choices can we make today that are going to move us in a direction that we want our life to go in, then that's all that we can ask for, really.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love it. And I don't want to almost add anything else, because this was such a nice kind of finish line and kind of closing the circle of everything we've talked so far. Like, yeah, it all comes down that we all have a choice, and we need to choose. I'd say we need to choose us firstly and
Yes.
primarily. Then
Exactly.
We need to choose us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes, we have to make decisions that feel scary, feel daunting, feel a little bit out of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
But if we're choosing it because it's going to help us and our future and our levels of success and our happiness, then that gut feeling of no, it's the right feeling is the choice to make.
Oh, I love this sentence. I will, yeah, I will, when I re-listen to the recording, I'll just like write it down on the, oh my God, how is this called?
Post it.
Thank you. Post it. Post it and stick it to my wall because I think it's very valuable to keep all of those all of these kind of sentences and train of thought in mind, because it's really easy to kind of forget them or lose them, because it's not something that we are um, learned almost like or used to hearing and used to practicing. So having
Mm,
physical reminders like these around the home really helps to come back and
definitely.
think, yeah, like I choose me today, and benchmark
Yes.
every decision. Like, does this help me? Does this serve me? Does this serve? Does this help me arrive to where I want to be in like 3 months or a year or whatever it is?
Yeah. Amazing.
Thank you so much, Nicola, for all of your knowledge and wisdom and advice today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. It's been a great conversation.
And thank you everyone who has joined or who's listening to this on the podcast. I hope you have enjoyed the episode as much as I did. And as always, you can come to unsettingexpectations.com and see the transcript as a interview and with action marks. Basically, everything that Nicola said that was just so packed with wisdom is going to be live throughout next week. And yeah, that's it. Thank you, Nicola, for joining. And I'll talk to you again in December.
Thank you. Speak to you soon.
Speak soon. Bye, everyone.